Hey everyone, welcome to English Podcast Pattern. Today, we're jumping into the time machine of grammar. We're going to master the past perfect tense. And we're using our favorite picture book, English Grammar in Use by Raymond Murphy, Unit 15, page 30-31. Ready? Let's learn, laugh, and level up our English. Let's start with a story. Imagine this. Sarah arrived at the party, but Paul had already gone home. What happened first? Yes, Paul went home before Sarah arrived. So we say, Paul had gone home. Past perfect. Sarah arrived at the party. Past simple. We use had plus past participle to talk about something that happened before another thing in the past. Mini tip. Past perfect, the past of the past. Present. Perfect. I've seen that movie. It matters now. Maybe you're telling a friend. Past. Perfect. I had seen that movie before. You're talking about the past, a memory before another past moment. Let's compare. The house was dirty. They didn't clean it for weeks. Past simple. The house was dirty. They hadn't cleaned it for weeks. Past perfect. Past perfect gives us the cause or background. Let's look at more fun examples. First example. When we got home, we found someone had broken into the flat. First, let's look at the two actions happening. Got home past simple, had broken into the flat, past perfect. What happened first? First, someone broke into the flat. This action happened before the people got home. Later, they got home and found that the flat was already broken into. Why do we use past perfect? Past perfect, had broken, shows the action that happened earlier in the past. Past simple, got home, found, shows the action that happened later in the past. The past perfect connects two past events and makes it clear which one happened first. Let's learn example in a story. We went to a movie. While we were out, a thief broke into our flat. When we came back, we found the door open. Someone had broken in before we arrived. Whenever you talk about two past actions and one action happened before the other, use past perfect for the first action. Use past simple for the second action. Let's learn. Next sentence is Karen didn't come to the cinema. She had already seen the movie. Two actions happen here. Didn't come to the cinema. Past simple had already seen the movie. Past perfect. What happened first? First, Karen saw the movie. Past perfect, had seen later there was an invitation to go to the cinema, but she didn't come. Past simple, didn't come. Why do we use past perfect? Past perfect, had seen, tells us what happened earlier. Karen watched the movie before the invitation to the cinema. Past simple didn't come, describes the later action she decided not to come because she had already seen it. Past perfect helps make the time order very clear, even if the story is told in a different sequence. Story. Example. Last week, we planned to watch the new superhero movie at the cinema, but Karen didn't come with us. Why? Because she had already seen the movie last weekend. Let's move on to the third example. I thought I did the right thing, but I soon realized I had made a mistake. Why is past perfect used here? And when should you use it? Let's break it down together. First, I made a mistake. But at that time, I didn't know it was a mistake. Then, I thought I did the right thing. Later, I realized it was actually a mistake. So making the mistake happened earliest. Thinking it was right happened after. Realizing the truth happened last. We use past perfect, had made, to talk about the earliest action. Something that was already completed before another past action. I had made a mistake. The mistake happened before I realized it. Without past perfect, the meaning would be confusing. It helps us be very clear about the time order. Imagine you give your friend advice. At first you think, wow, I did the right thing. But later, you find out your advice actually made things worse. At that moment, you realize, I thought I did the right thing, but I soon realized I had made a mistake. Let's dive into fourth example. The people sitting next to me on the plane were nervous. They hadn't flown before. Let's understand exactly why we use the past perfect here and how you can use it too. Imagine you're on a plane, ready for takeoff. You notice that the people sitting right next to you look very nervous, biting their nails, gripping their seats, wide-eyed. Why are they so nervous? Because they have never flown before this day. But because we are talking about a past situation, we have to use the past perfect tense. They hadn't flown before. The sentence has two important parts. First, at some point in their lives, they had never flown. No flying experience. Then they sat on the plane and were nervous because it was their first time. So, no flying experience happened earlier. Feeling nervous happened later during the flight. Thus, we use past perfect for the earlier event. Without past perfect, the meaning would be confusing. The past perfect makes the time relationship super clear. Let's imagine another similar situation. The boy was crying. He had never traveled alone before. I was excited. I had never visited Paris before. Present perfect and past perfect. And trust me, by the end, you'll feel like pros. Let's dive right in. First, let's talk about the present perfect. To this example, I've seen that movie. What does this mean? It means I watched the movie at some point in my life, and it matters right now. Maybe you're telling your friend because you don't want to watch it again. We use present perfect when the past experience is connected to now. Examples: I've eaten sushi. She has traveled to Japan. We have finished our homework. Now what about past perfect? Listen to this example. I had seen that movie before. Here, you are talking about the past of the past. Maybe you're remembering that you saw the movie before another past event, like before your friend suggested it, or before going to the cinema. Examples: I had finished dinner before you arrived. She had left when we called. Let's compare with an easy example. The house was dirty. They didn't clean it for weeks. It's past simple. vs. The house was dirty. They hadn't cleaned it for weeks. It's past perfect. In the second sentence, hadn't cleaned shows the cause the house was dirty because they had not cleaned it for weeks before. Past perfect gives us the background for why something happened. Exercise time. Let's do page 31. Exercise 15.1. Fill in the past. Perfect. The first sentence is, there was a picture on the floor. The answer is, it had fallen off the wall. Imagine you walk into a room. You see a picture lying on the floor. You wonder, why is the picture on the floor? Then you understand. Oh, it had fallen off the wall before I came in. That's the story we are telling. The picture was on the floor. Its past simple describes the moment you walked in. It had fallen off the wall earlier. Its past perfect tells us about the earlier action, the fall. We use past perfect because we have two actions in the past. We want to show which one happened first. Past perfect clearly marks the earlier action. Without past perfect, the meaning could be confusing or unclear. Past perfect helps the listener understand the correct order, even if we tell the story backward. The second sentence is, the people on the plane were nervous. The answer is, they hadn't flown before. Imagine this. You're sitting on a plane, ready for takeoff. Next to you, there's a group of people looking very nervous. They are holding on to their seats, wide-eyed, maybe whispering to each other. Why are they so nervous? Because they hadn't flown before. We are talking about an experience that happened, or in this case, didn't happen, before the moment they were nervous. Past simple shows what you observed at that time nervous people. Past perfect explains their earlier life experience or the lack of it. We use past perfect when there are two past events. We want to show that one event happened before the other. We want to explain the reason for a past situation. Here, Their lack of flying experience happened long before the flight. Their nervousness happened during the flight. Past perfect makes the time relationship super clear. Without it, the sentence would sound confusing, like both things happened at the same moment. The third sentence is, you went back to your town. The answer is, it had changed a lot. Imagine this. You left your hometown many years ago. You went off to study, to work, or travel the world. Now, after many years, you return. But when you get there, everything feels different. The streets look new. The shops you loved are gone. There are tall new buildings and different parks. You think it had changed a lot. Past simple talks about your return. Main past action. Past perfect talks about the changes that already happened before you arrived. We use past perfect because we have two actions in the past. One action, the town changing, happened first, before you returned. We want to show the correct time order clearly. Past perfect, the earlier or completed past. If we only used past simple for everything, the listener could get confused. Did the town change after you arrived? Or was it already changed before you came? That's why we use past perfect. The fourth sentence is, somebody sang a song you didn't know. The answer is, I hadn't heard it before. Imagine you're at a concert or a party. Someone stands up and starts singing a song. You listen carefully, but you realize I don't know this song at all. I've never heard it before. But we are telling this story about the past. So in English, we say, somebody sang a song. I hadn't heard it before. Past simple tells us what happened at the concert, the singing. Past perfect tells us about our experience, or lack of experience, before that singing. We use past perfect because two things are happening in the past. We want to show clearly that one event, not hearing the song, happened before another, the singing. Without past perfect, it might sound like you didn't hear the singing, which is not what we mean. We mean, you had never heard the song before the person started singing. Past perfect gives the correct meaning. It was unfamiliar even before the singing began. The fifth sentence is, I invited Rachel to the party, but she couldn't come. The answer is, she had arranged to do something else. Imagine this. You're throwing a big party. You're excited you invite your friends, and of course, you invite Rachel too, but she says she can't come. You feel disappointed. Why can't she come? Because Rachel had already made other plans before you invited her. So we say, I invited Rachel to the party, but she couldn't come. She had arranged to do something else. And past simple tells us what you did inviting her. Past perfect tells us about her previous commitment, something that had already happened before your invitation. We use past perfect because two things happened in the past. We want to show which one happened first. Rachel's arrangement happened before your invitation. Past perfect makes the time order very clear. First, she arranged other plans. Later, you invited her. Without past perfect, it would be unclear, did she arrange plans after you invited her? Or had she already made plans before? That's why we use past perfect. The sixth sentence is, you went to the cinema last night. You got to the cinema late. The answer is, the film had already started. Imagine this. Last night, you planned to see a movie with your friends. But unfortunately, you were a little late getting there. Maybe traffic was bad, maybe you lost your keys. When you finally got to the cinema, you realized the film had already started. You missed the beginning. So we say, you got to the cinema late. The film had already started. Past simple describes when you arrived. Past perfect explains what had already happened before that, the film starting. We use past perfect because there are two events in the past. We need to show that one event, the film starting, happened before another event, you arriving. Past perfect gives the listener a clear time order. Without it, they might think the film started after you arrived, but that's not true. First, The film started. Then, you arrived late. That's why we say the film had already started. The 7th sentence is, last year we went to Mexico. It was our first time there. We hadn't been there before. Last year, you and your friends decided to go on an exciting trip to Mexico. You packed your bags, booked the flights, and landed in a beautiful new country. It was amazing. But guess what? It was also your very first time in Mexico. So you say, last year we went to Mexico. We hadn't been there before. Past simple describes the main event, your trip. Past perfect describes your life experience before the trip. You had never been there. We use past perfect because we are comparing 2 times in the past. We want to show that before last year's trip, you had never been to Mexico. Past perfect makes it very clear the never visited experience happened before the traveling event. Without past perfect, it could sound confusing, as if you had already visited Mexico before, and that's not true. The 8th sentence is, I met Daniel last week. It was good to see him again after such a long time. I hadn't seen him for 5 years. Imagine this. You're walking downtown, going to your favorite coffee shop, and suddenly, you bump into Daniel. You're surprised and happy because it's been so long since you last saw him. You think to yourself, I met Daniel last week. I hadn't seen him for 5 years. That's a long time. Past simple describes the moment you met him. K. Past perfect describes the situation before that meeting, no contact for 5 years. We use past perfect because 2 time frames are involved both in the past. The 5-year gap happened before the meeting. Past perfect helps show. The long time with no meeting. The meeting event after the long time. Without past perfect, it could sound like the 5 years happened after meeting, and that's not the correct meaning. The 9th sentence is, I offered my friends something to eat, but they weren't hungry. They had just had lunch. Imagine this, you're with your friends, hanging out. You want to be polite, so you say, hey guys, would you like something to eat? But your friends say, no, thanks, we're not hungry. Why weren't they hungry? Because they had just eaten lunch before you asked. So we say I offered my friends something to eat, but they weren't hungry. They had just had lunch. The 10th sentence is Sam played tennis yesterday. He wasn't very good at it because it was his first game ever. The answer is, he had never played before. Sam's friends invite him to play tennis. It's a sunny day and everyone's excited. Sam picks up the racket. But when the game starts, it's clear he's struggling. He misses shots. He doesn't know how to hold the racket properly. Why? Because he had never played tennis before. So we say Sam played tennis yesterday. He wasn't very good because he had never played before. Past simple tells about the tennis game yesterday. Past perfect explains his total lack of experience before the game. We use past perfect because we're describing 2 things in the past. One thing, never playing tennis, happened before the other, playing the match. Past perfect makes it very clear Sam's inexperience existed before the game started. Without past perfect, listeners might misunderstand and think both actions happened at the same time, but they didn't. His inexperience was the background to what happened during the game. Let's move on. Exercise 15.2, page 31. The first sentence is somebody broke into the office during the night. We arrived at work in the morning. We called the police. Sounds simple, right? But when you tell this story correctly in English, the grammar is super important. Let's dive in. It's early morning. You walk into the office with your colleagues. But something's wrong. The door is open. Papers are everywhere. You realize somebody had broken into the office during the night. So what do? You call the police? Past perfect tells us what happened earlier, the break-in. Past simple tells what happened later, your arrival and your call to the police. We use past perfect because 2 actions happened in the past. One action, the break-in, happened before the other, your arrival. Past perfect makes the time relationship very clear. First, the crime happened. Then, you arrived and discovered it. Finally, you called the police. If you only used past simple, it would sound like everything happened at the same time, and that would be confusing. The second sentence is Laura went out this morning. I rang her doorbell. There was no answer. Answer is I went to Laura's house this morning and rang her doorbell, but there was no answer. Laura had gone out. Why do we say had gone out and not just Laura went out? Let's break it down together. Picture this. You go to your friend Laura's house early in the morning, you ring the doorbell, you wait, but nothing. No footsteps, no answer. Where is she? You find out later, Laura had gone out already. That explains everything. You arrived and rang the bell. Art past simple. Laura had already left. Past perfect. Past perfect gives the background, the reason why there was no answer when you rang. It gives a clear time order and explains why the result, no answer, makes sense. Without past perfect, if we said Laura went out, the listener might think she left after you rang. And that's not what happened. Remember, past perfect gives us the cause, it means the past before your past. Past simple gives us the main event we're telling. The third sentence is, I met Joe a few days ago. He had just come back from holiday. He looked very well. The answer is, I met Joe a few days ago. He had just come back from holiday. So why do we use had just come back here? Let's explore that, step by step. A few days ago, you're walking down the street and suddenly, you run into Joe. You haven't seen him for a while. He looks relaxed, tanned, and happy. You think, he must have just come back from somewhere nice. And that's what happened. So you say, I met Joe a few days ago. He had just come back from holiday. You're talking about meeting Joe, it's past simple. But Joe's return from holiday happened before that. So we use past perfect. Had just come back completed before the meeting. We use past perfect because two actions happened in the past. One action, Joe's holiday ending, happened before the other, you meeting him. Past perfect helps make the time order crystal clear. If you said, Joe came back from holiday, I met him, it might sound like he returned after you met, and that would confuse the listener. Past perfect fixes that by showing the earlier event. The fourth sentence is James sent Amy lots of emails. She never replied to them. Yesterday he got a phone call from her. He was surprised. Answer is yesterday James got a phone call from Amy. He was surprised. He had sent her lots of emails, but she had never replied. Imagine James. He's been trying to reach Amy for weeks. He writes her message after message, explaining, asking, checking in. But guess what? No reply. Not even one. Then, out of nowhere, yesterday, Amy calls. James is totally surprised, because up to that point, he had sent her lots of emails, but she had never replied. Past simple tells what happened yesterday, the phone call and the surprise. Past perfect gives us the background, what happened and didn't happen before that moment. We use past perfect here to clearly show that James's emails and Amy's silence happened before the phone call. Provide the reason for why he was so surprised. Without past perfect, you might confuse the timeline and think James sent the emails after the phone call, which is not the case. He had sent, happened first. He got the call, happened later. That's the magic of past perfect. It makes the time relationship crystal clear. Great, let's do exercise 15.3. Put the verb into the correct form, past perfect, I had done, or past simple, I did. The first sentence is Paul wasn't at the party when I arrived. He'd gone, go, home. Answer is Paul wasn't at the party when I arrived. He'd gone home. Now, I'll explain why this sentence uses the past perfect and not just the past simple. Imagine you arrive at a party. Maybe you're a little late. You look around, you ask, where's Paul? Someone says, oh, Paul? He already left. You just missed him. So when you tell the story, you say, Paul wasn't at the party when I arrived. He'd gone home. This tiny contraction he'd is actually he had, and it's important. So we use past simple to talk about your arrival. This is your main story moment. And we use past perfect to explain that Paul left before you got there. This happened earlier, before you arrived. Past perfect. The earlier action. Why not past simple for both? Good question. If you said, Paul wasn't at the party, he went home, it sounds like he left after you arrived. That's not true. He was already gone when you got there. So we say, he had gone home because it happened before your arrival. This is why we use past perfect to make the time order clear. The second sentence is, I felt very tired when I got home, so I go straight to bed. Answer is, I felt very tired when I got home, so I went straight to bed. Now you might be wondering, why is this past simple and not past perfect? Let's break it down in a way that's easy, visual, and logical. You've had a long day. You finally walk through the door. You're exhausted. What do? You don't check emails. You don't watch TV. You go straight to bed. So you say, I felt very tired when I got home, so I went straight to bed. Why past simple is correct. Let's look at the verbs. I felt very tired is past simple. I got home is past simple. I went straight to bed, past simple. All of these events happened in a clear, natural order, one after the other. We use past simple here because each action follows the next. No action happened before another past moment that needs to be highlighted separately. This is just a normal story in the past, told in the order it happened. You don't need past perfect unless you want to show one action happened before another past event. For example, I got home and the lights were off. Everyone had gone to bed. Here, you arrived later. Past perfect is used to show what already happened. But in our sentence, I got home. I felt tired. I went to bed. There's no reason to jump backward in time, so we just use past simple for everything. The third sentence is, the house was very quiet when I got home. Everybody, go to bed. The answer is, the house was very quiet when I got home. Everybody had gone to bed. Why do we use had gone here and not just went? Imagine, you've been out all evening, maybe at work or seeing friends. It's late. You quietly open the door. The house is completely silent. No TV, no music. You realize everyone's asleep. So you say the house was very quiet when I got home. Everybody had gone to bed. The past perfect is used to show that the action, going to bed, was already finished by the time you arrived. You didn't watch them go to bed. You arrived after they had already gone. Let's see what happens if we used past simple. Everybody went to bed. That could mean they went to bed after you arrived, but that's not true. They were already in bed. That's why we say, everybody had gone to bed. It's an action that happened before your arrival. That's the job of the past perfect. It helps us show the earlier past. First, they had gone to bed. Then, you arrived. The fourth sentence is, Mark travels a lot. When I first met him, he already travel round the world. Answer is Mark travels a lot. When I first met him, he had already traveled round the world. First, notice the 2 time zones here. Mark travels a lot. General present tense. A habit or repeated action. When I first met him. This is in the past. He had already traveled round the world. This happened even before the moment of meeting. We're talking about something that was already complete before you met Mark. Think about this. You're talking about your first meeting with Mark maybe 5 years ago. But at that time, he had already finished traveling around the world. This is where we must use past perfect. He had already traveled round the world. The past perfect shows an action, his travel, and was already completed before another past moment, your first meeting. Let's try this version. When I first met him, he already traveled round the world. That's not correct. Traveled here sounds like it happened at the same time as met, but that's not what we mean. We mean he had already done it before we met. That's why we must say, he had already traveled round the world The fifth sentence is, sorry I'm late. The car, break, down on my way here. Answer is sorry I'm late. The car had broken down on my way here. Imagine the timeline. The car broke down and you arrived late. Now you're explaining why you're late. You're in the present saying, sorry I'm late. But the car problem happened before now. Actually, it happened before you arrived. So we need to show one past action, car broke. Happened before another past moment, you arrived. That's the perfect case for past perfect. Let's try it with past simple. The car broke down on my way here. Grammatically, it's okay. But does it sound right in context? Remember, you're already late. You're explaining the reason. So the car had already broken down before you said, sorry I'm late. This is cause and result. Cause, the car had broken down. Result, you were late? That's why we use past perfect here. The sixth sentence is, we were driving along the road when we see a car which break down, so we stop to help. Answer is, we were driving along the road when we saw a car which had broken down, so we stopped to help. 3 actions are happening in this story. A car had broken down. We were driving, saw it, we stopped to help. So the question is, which action happened first? The car broke down before we saw it. We saw it while we were driving. Then we stopped. So we build a clear timeline in our mind. That's where past perfect comes in. So remember this pattern. Use past perfect when something happened before another past event, especially when explaining a scene or cause. Thanks for listening to English Podcast Pattern. Subscribe for more deep grammar made simple. And tell us in the comments, have you ever stopped to help someone whose car had broken down? See you next time.
Welcome to English Podcast Pattern. Today we're diving into mastering the past perfect tense, exploring how it tells us the past of the past.
Yep. It's so cool how this tense helps us show that one action happened earlier than another in a story.
Exactly. Let's picture this. Sarah arrived at a party, but Paul had already gone home. The key is that Paul's leaving happened before Sarah showed up. We mark that with past perfect, saying had gone home.
Right. And the trick is using had plus the past participle for the earlier event. It's like layering time, you know?
Yeah, it's like building a timeline in your head. You've got the main event in the past, which is often in past simple, and then a little background event that happened before. Past perfect
Indeed.
does exactly that.
So when we say, for instance, the house was dirty, they hadn't cleaned it for weeks, we're giving a clear reason why the house was in that state before the moment of speaking.
Absolutely. It's a neat way to show cause and effect in the past. Without past perfect, a sentence like, they didn't clean the house for weeks would be plain simple and maybe could confuse the sequence, right?
Exactly. Because without that extra layer, the listener might misinterpret the timeline. And then there's the mini tip. Past perfect, the past of the past. That's really catchy for remembering.
Right. Another fun thing is comparing present perfect to past perfect. When you say, I've seen that movie, it ties your past experience to the present. Maybe you're explaining why you don't want to see it again. But, I had seen that movie before indicates that the viewing happened before some other past moment, like before someone invited you to it.
That really highlights why tense choice is critical in storytelling. The past perfect, as you said, gives us the background story, which clarifies the order of events.
Exactly. And let's look at another classic example. When we got home, we found someone had broken into the flat. The action of breaking in happened earlier, which is why we say had broken in. Then we follow with got home in past simple.
Right. I love that clear structure. First the break-in, then the discovery. It really helps the listener visualize the timeline perfectly.
Yeah, and it's like when you say, Karen didn't come to the cinema. She had already seen the movie. Here, her watching the movie happens before the invitation. Without past perfect, people might wonder if she watched it after being invited or something awkward like that.
True, And it prevents misinterpretation. I mean, language can be so tricky sometimes, right?
Right, right. And there's a whole series of examples built on this principle. Think about the story. I thought I did the right thing, but I soon realized I had made a mistake. The mistake was made before the realization, and only because of the past perfect do we understand that sequence.
I see that. Though I sometimes wonder if people overuse past perfect. Like, could we sometimes just rely on context?
That's a good point. But in many cases, especially in written stories or exercises, clarity is king. Without that explicit marker, the listener might get lost in the order of events.
Absolutely, clarity matters. Yeah, and I find it intriguing how exercises show this so well. For instance, imagine walking into a room and noticing a picture on the floor. You immediately connect the dots. It had fallen off the wall versus just saying it fell off.
Precisely. The difference is subtle but powerful. The past perfect symptomatically tells us that the fall happened before the moment of discovery.
Right. And then there's the airplane example. The people sitting next to me on the plane were nervous. They hadn't flown before. This paints a picture of their inexperience, causing their nervousness almost immediately.
Oh, definitely. It's a vivid, almost cinematic image. You're on a plane, and the past perfect explains the nervous vibe. Hadn't flown before, contrasted sharply with the simple description of their present state using the past
Yep.
simple.
I also like the example where I invited Rachel to the party, but she had arranged to do something else. It's such a real life scenario. You plan something, but prior commitments change everything.
Exactly. And these examples, from a party to catching a movie, they all stress the idea that one past event sets the stage for another. Without past perfect, those time relationships would be pretty muddled.
Now, when we transition to exercises like filling in blanks, such as there was a picture on the floor, it had fallen off the wall, the value of the past perfect becomes clear. It gets students to actively see that one event precedes another.
Yes, and exercises like that are fun because they practically force you to think about what happened first. It's like solving a mini mystery in the timeline of events.
Agreed. And then there's the interesting contrast where sometimes we don't use past perfect, like in, I felt very tired when I got home, so I went straight to bed. Here, the events follow naturally, without needing that additional marker.
Right, because there's a natural sequence that's already understood by context. It's not necessary there because the events are directly sequential. But if you had a background detail like the house was very quiet because everybody had gone to bed, then past perfect nails the order.
Exactly. And then there's the case of explaining reasons, like with a car breakdown. Sorry, I'm late. The car had broken down on my way here. It's a cause and effect that, demands clarity in the timeline.
Yeah, it's really like showing the hidden backstory behind an event. The car breaking down happened before the tardiness, and the past perfect ensures we don't mix the order up.
That's key. There's also remarkable clarity in the exercise where someone met Joe after his holiday and we say, he had just come back. That subtle word just in past perfect emphasizes how immediately before the meeting the action was completed.
Exactly. It's all about painting that clear picture in the listener's mind. Picture this. You meet someone and you note they had just come back from holiday. Without that, one might wonder if the return was simultaneous with the meeting.
Absolutely, yes. And it's interesting how these subtle distinctions, using past perfect versus past simple, can completely change a story's timeline and interpretation.
Right. And while it might seem a bit fancy or even redundant to some, its importance in precise storytelling, explanations, and even everyday conversation can't be underestimated.
True, though sometimes I think people might challenge if the extra step is always needed. I see your point, but I'd say when clarity is crucial, like in teaching grammar or narrating complex sequences, it's invaluable.
Absolutely. And these exercises are crafted so that students clearly see how the past perfect gives the background and sets the stage. It's almost like the unsung hero of storytelling in English.
Yeah, definitely. And after going through all these examples, like the cinema, the trip home, Even the friend's email saga. It makes it so concrete how one event precedes another. And that's what we love about grammar, right? It gives us the tools to tell our stories without confusion.
Exactly. And by the end of this journey, you feel like a pro at distinguishing between present perfect that connects to now and past perfect that takes you further back in the timeline.
For sure. So, if someone asks, what does past perfect do? You can confidently say, it shows the earlier action in a past narrative. Simple and clear.
Right. And it all comes down to marking the time relationship explicitly, so that even if the narrative jumps around a little, the listener isn't lost.
Absolutely. This was a great refresher on how powerful tense can be. I mean, sometimes it's just the right word order that makes storytelling elegant, don't you think?
Oh yeah, totally. It's like ordering your ingredients in a recipe. If you mix them up, you're not going to get the right flavor. The past perfect is that secret spice showing that one action was completed long before another.
Yeah, exactly. And with these detailed examples and exercises, anyone can get a handle on the past perfect. It's a fun mix of logic, storytelling, and a little bit of drama, just the way language should be.
Couldn't agree more. From the party scenarios to the car breakdown admissions and homecomings, all these stories rely on clear time ordering, and past perfect provides that magical clarity.
Thanks for that deep dive. I'm feeling much more confident about navigating these past events now.
Awesome. Whether you're laughing at the idea of a picture falling off a wall or nodding along at a friend's late night car breakdown, remember, just mark your timeline clearly with past perfect when needed, and you'll never miss a beat.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, keep practicing with those exercises. The more examples you work through, the more natural it becomes.
Exactly. Thanks for joining this deep dive into the time machine of grammar. Until next time, keep learning, keep laughing, and keep leveling up your English.
Yeah, see you next time.